Okay, let's talk about the Western Conference, and I'm mostly going to focus on, I guess, the 4 through 8, 9 spots, but we're kind of going to touch on most teams in the West here. Mostly because, look, the Nuggets have a 5.5 game cushion on the 1 seed. The Kings and the Grizzlies are competing for the 2 seed right now. The Kings are scoring a million points on everybody with the Grizzlies. We'll see with the Ja Morant situation. Even if they can still hold up without him, of course, and defensively they're great. If I can just have a moment on Sacramento, man, I think about my Halliburton trade reaction video probably once a day, and I'm so embarrassed by that whole thing, but I mean, holy crap. The Kings have 40 wins of the 2 seed, and we're like 2 weeks from the playoffs. And look, man, with their shooters around Sabonis and all the handoff actions, and De'Aaron Fox, who just basically never misses free throw line pull-up jumpers, and with that home crowd, like that Kings team, they're going to be very fun to watch in the playoffs. If I can give you anything on Denver, and we'll keep it about the defense, yeah, Jokic needs to be better defensively than what he's been the past few games, and I, like the rest of the internet, saw some of those possessions against the Spurs where it was like, well, he was in the vicinity, but that was kind of about it. I'm just going to repeat what I said whenever I talked about the Nuggets like a month ago or whatever. When Jokic is at the level of the screen and he's putting his best effort there and they've got rotations behind him, they have been much better like that than with Jokic in a drop and asking him to be more of a rim protector. Phoenix has a little bit of a cushion on the big ol' something that's right under them in the West, and they are within shouting distance of the Kings and the Grizzlies. But just real quick on the Suns, KD's played 3 games, and funny enough, the one play that did not result in a bucket, which is one of the few times he's actually missed a shot for them so far, was the one I was most intrigued about, where it was like CP and Ayton setting a double screen for him up top with Devin Booker in the opposite corner. It's like, oh, that's a pretty tough type of play to guard. Of course, you've had your KD ISOs, you've had your Ayton and Landale screening for him plays, you've had your quick little down screens for him in their offense. Like, it looked seamless pretty much out of the jump. Like, yeah, they're hoping on a Kogi to make shots, and Terrence Ross can give them some shots off the dribble, which are nice, as opposed to just simple catch and shoots. But KD's also going to be out for a minute here with the ankle thing, and I'm choosing to just not be that concerned. Again, they have a little bit of a cushion in the standings. CP and Booker doing their thing, and speaking of Booker, I don't know if the numbers would like scream that this is happening, but when I watch him, it feels like he's doing a little bit of what DeRozan did a couple years ago, where it's still a lot of mid-range, but it feels like he's putting in more of an emphasis on getting a couple feet closer to the rim before he goes up for pull-ups, so maybe that's like getting the defender on his back or whatever. I might just be crazy, but that's kind of what I feel like when I watch them. Now let's get to the real meat of the conference here. So let's start with the Clippers. You know, with Westbrook, we have seen catch and shoots. And of course, defenses are always going to try to find ways to play off a Russ. We have seen transition. We have seen the occasional screen from Zubats or Plumlee with him. We've seen Russ screen for Kawhi at least a little bit. Like, there were a couple plays in their last Knicks one, I believe it was the Knicks game, where one led to a dump off to, it was either Zubats or Plumlee underneath the basket. Another one led to Westbrook getting a layup. And the plays that intrigue me the most are the ones where it's like Westbrook getting a screen and then Terrence Mann cutting because he's got an opportunity. Or, you know, there was one where it was like some swing action. It ends up with Gordon in the corner. He swings it to Russ. He attacks off the catch and then lobs it up to Plumlee. You know, like that downhill stuff that the Clippers could use outside of Kawhi and PG doing everything they do, right? One note on the Clippers, not really sure about Marcus Morris's minutes at this point. I mean, he had 11 on good shooting in his last one. We'll give him that. But when I just think about like what Terrence Mann gives them with his driving to the basket, what Gordon can give them because he's still got some of that in his game on top of the three-point shooting he can give you. Norm Powell can, of course, get downhill. I think if you're going to go with a wing who doesn't score a lot of points, Batum or Covington are probably better options than Morris at this point. Clippers fans are pretty much done with Morris. Like, I tried to get a temperature of him on Twitter yesterday, and they're pretty much like, yeah, we don't want to see this guy in the rotation. So we'll see with that. Ty Lue seems to like him. Russ's turnovers have still been like a little high because he's just a daring player. Like, he's just going to try for drives and random passes that most guys aren't going to try, and sometimes they work, and sometimes it becomes a turnover. It is what it is. If we can go on to Dallas. So 2 questions. One, the defense, it's not good. We all know this. I think they really could have used Nerlens Noel when he went to the buyout market. They couldn't get him. It is what it is. Offensively, how much have Kyrie and Luka directly played off each other? Well, of course, there's going to be the possessions where one of them is in a pick and roll or an ISO and the other one is spotting up. Within that sort of thing, I think when Luka is posting up and Kyrie is one pass away, that's still pretty interesting. I know that's not the first time I've said that. But there has been some actions sprinkled in there. In the Philly game recently, Kyrie did have himself a few off-ball sets. One where I remember where he cut from one side of the paint to the other and got it from Luka, and then he got into a pull-up jumper or whatever. I remember Dwight Powell setting some off-ball stuff for Kyrie. There was a play in the Jazz game they had recently, I remember, where Bullock and Dwight Powell set a double screen for Kyrie, and then Luka came up and got another screen from Powell, which then led to him being able to attack off the catch and get inside. So there's some stuff here and there, but you're definitely not going to see it every possession. They also stagger the two of them, and the Kyrie-only minutes have been pretty successful. How can they pull out the best defense possible, or just say screw it and be like, we're just going to try to outscore everybody 150 to 152? So, for example, one lineup that I'm intrigued by is Kyrie and Luka with Josh Green, Reggie Bullock, and Maxi Kleber. That lineup has played 8 minutes, so we'll see with that. As far as Christian Wood's minutes, it feels pretty much the same it's been all season. He's hovering around 20 minutes a game. The highest it's been recently is 26. The lowest was 15. Let's go to the Warriors. Of course, my last video was about them, so I don't want to sound like a broken record, but the consistency on defense, specifically on the road, just has to be better, whether it's communication or simply playing harder on closeouts and being better on rotations. Yeah, they could use a point of attack defender, which was hopefully going to be GP2, and then that whole thing with the Blazers medical staff came out. He's still on the roster. I don't know if he's ever going to be able to play this season. We hope that whatever's going on with Wiggins behind the scenes is okay. Let's get to the T-Wolves, who have probably been one of the tougher teams for me to evaluate, partially because it seems like every time I check in on them, they've either lost 3 in a row or won 3 in a row or lost 4 of 5 or something. Look, offensively, for as great as Anthony Edwards has been, they haven't had Karl Anthony Towns for basically 3 months, so I don't think it's a coincidence that the offense just hasn't been that great consistently. I mean, they traded buckets with the Kings in a recent game, but yeah, and defensively, for the season, they're 10th overall. If you want to dive into specific games, it looks better or worse depending on the night. And Gobert has not single-handedly made them the best defense in the league, which was basically what was happening for the Jazz a bunch of years there. But even so, I think without Rudy, they'd be 10 games below 500, or potentially even worse right now. The on-off numbers would argue with me a little bit there, because they basically are a 0 net rating with Gobert on and off the court. And yes, Naz Reid is a good player. I am just choosing to believe that without Gobert, this defense would be bad. Still a whole bunch of possessions every game of him being in drop and guards having to pass out of stuff or taking pull-up jumpers because the basket is just pretty much walled off. Yes, Embiid just had a huge game against him. He made a bunch of jumpers. Rudy was in drop, and there was some pick and pops in there. If you go on Reddit right now, you can find a play of him closing out to Dorian Finney-Smith as the Nets are in 5 out, but Kyle Anderson was not holding up well on Dinwiddie late in that game. And also Rudy had a number of possessions where he was switching really well onto the Nets guards and stuff in that game. Look, remember early in the season where it was kind of awkward and guys didn't know exactly how aggressively they should help when Rudy was in drop, and also Rudy sometimes wouldn't know how aggressively he should help when somebody else was kind of got beat by their guy, but they might be able to get back to him. I think they are working through that, but it's still kind of there, if that is sufficient evidence. Again, the Wolves trip me up. I don't know if I sound dumb throughout all this. Jaden, of course, has been great defensively as an on-ball defender, and Edwards has gotten better. I think defensively there's a lot of good signs. It's just a matter of they need Cat to come back, or else this offense is just never really going to pop like that. And there might still be some growing pains because, Rudy and Towns and that whole fit. Now we go to the Lakers. I would like to highlight a sequence that happened in their recent one against the Raptors, which if you're a Laker fan, you're probably pretty happy about. Fourth quarter, they are playing, I will say, kind of aggressively off of the Raptors shooters. They're sagging off, if you will. And it becomes a swing pass to Chris Boucher. Vanderbilt closes out like crazy from underneath the basket to Boucher, cuts him off. Austin Reeves is on the other side of the court, so I believe it's Gary Trent, who's basically wide open. Vanderbilt manages to deflect that pass, and then it gets in their hands, and it becomes a D-Lo transition 3, and it's oh wow, this is cool, the new guys. You have Austin Reeves, who's been handling the ball more recently, and you have AD, who's just manning the middle defensively, and he was in a pretty decent drop against the Grizzlies in their last one, as their defense was pretty amazing down the stretch of it. And so all eyes are just on LeBron's injury, pretty much, man. Let's go to OKC. Sam Presti did it again, man. Jalen Williams is awesome. His size and shiftiness and the way that he pulls off these dribble moves in the middle of his drive, I don't know, he'll get a defender leaning and then do an around the back thing. It's pretty impressive stuff, and I'm just projecting like the future with him and SGA and just the shot creation of those two, because I'm already penciling in Jalen Williams for being somebody you can run offense through right now and long term. Although Williams also gets his cutting on, which is huge when you're playing with Giddey. And OKC's looking good, man. As for the Jazz, they've been okay without Conley. THT is currently on a what the hell is going on run, where he's busting out like spin moves on guys and he's working around screens, and he's not a speed demon with the ball, but he's got the size and handle to make stuff happen. I don't know if this is going to be something that holds up, but it is a thing at the moment. I still love how they use Markkanen, those corner actions they run for him, simple down screens, if you will, but also like they'll have Walker Kessler set him off-ball screens at the top of the key, which can then get him going downhill towards the rim, catch it on the cut, that sort of thing. There was a play in the Dallas game where he started from the paint, and then he got a screen going up to the top of the key, kind of like an elevator play, but it wasn't an elevator play because it was only one guy setting him a screen. But yeah, he's always just moving in that offense. As for the Pelicans, it's injuries, man. It's one of those seasons, it's tough. They were really fun for a stretch there, but yeah. And as for the Blazers, shout out to Dame.